to start. Renee, I'm going to make you co-host. Is that okay? That you can
let people in. Yeah, no problem.
In. Yes. Where are you? More make co-hosts. Is the host now? Okay, you're hosting. Okay, so I am just going to start. We just noticed that our guest of today, Vince, disappeared again. He will be back in a minute. But let's just start. Welcome to this special online conversation hosted by Moving to the Future and the Wize Move Society, the online community for the over 50 generation. This wise generation is growing rapidly. We're living longer, are longer healthy and active, and are better educated than ever. There are many reasons why this generation should play a significant role in the economy and in society a lot longer than they expected when they started their career. So we believe that the over 50 generation has a significant role to play in the creation of the future. We just need to tap into their knowledge, experience, and wisdom. And with these Tuesday live conversations, we aim to give you a glimpse of what is happening online on the Wize Move Society, to share a bit about both the challenges and the opportunities that the 50+ generation is facing, as well as how the members of the Wize Move Society work together to create the solutions and play an active role in society and the economy. So we are very clear that we're not on our way out, we're part of the future. So for those who join us on Zoom, and more will probably jump in, we love you to join in the conversation. Those who are watching us on Facebook, please share your comments below in the chat so we can share that with our guest of today. So my name is Ingun. I'm the founder of Moving to the Future and the creator of the Wize Move Society. I'm here today with my co-host, Dr. Tatiana, Rowson, and our guest, Vince Pizzoni, originally from Italy, but based in the UK. And Vince, and we had to narrow it down, but he will tell you more about his background. He is a professor, a consultant, and a coach, and a member of the Wize Move Society. And together we will dive into the topic, reinventing myself. And Vince has a story to share. It's really great. So before we do that, I would like to give my co-host Tatiana the floor so she can share a bit more about her background, and she will pass on the stage to Vince.
Oh, thank you, Ingun. Hello, everyone, wherever you are, morning or evening. So I am a psychologist and a researcher and an academic. And my area is pretty much life transitions in midlife and beyond. And what does it happen as a consequence of these transitions in our lives? And what can we learn from researching it that we can apply to our own life? In a way, my kind of research is pretty much based on stories and narrative. I'm a qualitative researcher. I like to talk to people. I like to listen to people. So having Vince, you coming here to tell you your story is, for me, very exciting. I'm in my happy place. And there's definitely goes to show that we all have our stories with us wherever we go. So I think is a very nice way to encourage others as well to share their story with their peers and colleagues and friends. So without further ado, it's enough of me. I would like to welcome you, Vince, and yes, to join us in this conversation.
Well, thank you very much, Tatiana and Ingun, for inviting me. And I will do my very best to tell you a bit about my story and how it relates to reinventing my life. So I want to paint a picture which goes back about 17 years. So my wife and I are sitting at an awards dinner in a very posh place in Puerto Rico, where my company had invited myself and my wife because I'd won the chairman's award for the highest performing general manager in the company. And we were about to sit down to have our meal, and I would have to give a speech. So we looked at the menu card, and on the back of the menu card was a list of all the previous winners. And we went down the list of previous winners. A lot of them, of course, I knew. And there seemed to be one thing in common with all of them, and that was that within about 2 years of winning their awards, they'd left the company through various reasons. Left voluntarily to go somewhere else, maybe fired, whatever. So down the list, and I thought, fired, left the company. Wow. So I turned to my wife and I said, you know what? I suspect probably within 2 years I might be out of the company. And guess what happened? I was actually at age 51. I was actually the most senior person in Europe, and they decided to do a downsizing exercise, which I wasn't a surprise because, in fact, I'd been involved in downsizing the organization for the previous 2 or 3 years anyway. So in the end, my position was terminated and I left the company. Interestingly, I'd been with the company 15, 20 years, got to a senior level, and I was out of the company within 2 hours. Just about enough time to pack a few things and I was out. And you often see these pictures on the TV of these investment bankers who get fired and they're walking out with a cardboard box of stuff. Yeah. But it wasn't quite as bad as that. But I was out. So age 51, probably at the top of my game, or at least I thought then probably the top of my game. And the first thing I did, of course, was to call my wife. And although I was actually quite reasonable about it, she went up the wall and said, all those years you've served them and done this and you've got an award. And well, so I said, look, that's the nature of business. And what I then decided to do, a lot of my peers have gone through a similar thing. And I suppose what I decided to do was, well, this will be a springboard to do something else. And in fact, what happened was my wife at that stage had just got a new dog. So I spent 9 months walking around with this new dog, thinking about what I was going to do with my life, and maybe even trying to get the dog to give me a few ideas as well. But he was more concerned about, walking around at a fast pace. So I had several months to think about it. And during that time, I learned an awful lot about what's the changing nature of the job market. I'll come on to that a little bit at the end. And that's one thing I would say. When you work in an organization for many years, you don't actually realize sometimes how the world is changing outside of that environment. So I'd been in this corporate life and doing pretty well and all that sort of stuff. But actually, when I got out, I realized the world had changed and I needed to adapt myself to that change, learn more about the changing job market. I assumed at that time it was all about applying for jobs through websites and things like that. But actually, what happened was that the world was changing. And in fact, networking was becoming increasingly important. So I did a lot of networking with people I knew. I had lots of interviews. In the end, actually, I did get a job, but it was based in the north of Scotland, in Aberdeen, which was several hours away from where we lived. So we had a long chat about it. And I said, well, I think it's important I get back in the job market. We may have to live apart for a while, but I think it's important I do that. And my wife, we discussed this and we agreed. And actually, I moved up to Aberdeen. For 2 years, I was effectively living away from home, occasionally coming back down south and my wife coming up north. But so there's a big piece there about being adaptable, flexible, and maybe looking at the bigger picture for the long term. But interestingly, I'd made a decision at that stage. I was going to have a total career change. And I went from an industry environment to working in the educational sector. And I spent several years working in a school where I was able to adapt my skills to a school environment to become head of careers at this school. And in fact, from a business perspective, I think I was able to bring them a lot of value. That's another piece to reinventing your life, is actually sometimes you don't realize the skills that you've got from what you've already done can be adaptable in totally different areas and scenarios. And that was another area that I found. Eventually what happened was I developed a portfolio career which was encompassed education, executive coaching and recruitment, and also business school career coaching. I also managed to get on a number of boards. So actually I found over time, with that adaptability that I developed, plus an understanding that actually I was pretty good at coaching, because in fact that had been what I'd done a lot of in my career before, I developed more of a career around that. And in fact, I moved then to a portfolio career about 3 or 4 years ago, and worked in various locations, Nottingham University, London, etc., to develop that career. So you fast forward to COVID, and I think a lot of the skills and abilities and things that I learned from that career change and reinventing myself, I think have helped me with adapting to COVID, not least of which, of course, is moving away from what I prefer doing, which is face-to-face work with people, to online. So I've had to learn some new skills, new technologies, and that's another key thing, I think, when you're, I mean, I'm 68 this year. One thing about adapting is learning new technologies, and I think that's absolutely key. And we've had to, with the pandemic, we've had to learn those new skills. And for me, I hadn't used a lot of those before. I developed those. I wouldn't say I'm totally 100% expert at them, but I know enough to be able now to do a lot of the coaching online, which I think has been very important. And now we're certainly in a hybrid, so you need to have this ability for both. So I think all those things that I learned back about 16 years ago, I've now adapted and used going forward with COVID. And I think if I could just end with picking on several things that I thought were key to that reinvention from, if you like, working full-time in business to having a portfolio career. I've made a list here in front of me. I think networking, absolutely important. Developing network is very important from very, very early on in your career, even from university or those early years. And that network will sustain you and help you in the future going forward. And it has certainly helped and sustained me. And I've used that network very much. And I help that network as well. So it's a two-way thing. Having a strong network, absolutely key. Second thing I've got on this list is getting a good understanding of what your skills and strengths are, because the reality, it may be that you think, well, all I can do is lead an organization in multiple countries, which is what I was doing. But actually, I had other skills and strengths that have come through to the fore in the last 15 years, and that have been around coaching and mentoring of people. I think that's an area that I've developed, and certainly was an area of strength, which has come increasingly since I've reinvented myself. Receptive to change. The environment that we're in, I talked about the changing job market. We need to understand that, and we need to be adapting to it. I mean, if you could draw a line of the way the jobs market has changed, it's not like that. It's not 45 degrees or 30 degrees. It's probably almost like that. It's incredible rate of change now, probably faster than I've ever had in my career. And I've been working for 46 years, and I think it's quicker now than it's ever been in my life. I think also there's a need to be versatile, adaptable, and flexible. I think the move I made that I discussed with my wife, and we agreed to go up to the north, was probably a defining point. I could have said, no, I don't want that. I could even have said, well, maybe it's a time to take early retirement. But at 51, I actually felt I had lots still to give. And I do. And in fact, that's a key thing for all of us online here. We may be slower at certain things, but actually we know a lot more. So actually, in my role, I believe it's all about inspiring and motivating future generations. I probably know a lot more now than I've ever known in my life. And probably I'm better at coaching and mentoring than I would have been 15, 20 years ago. So it's all about being versatile and adaptable. Open to new technology, I mentioned earlier, absolutely important. And then just to end, and I think my time's up, positive. being positive and optimistic. That's something I learned from my parents, who had a much tougher life than I ever had. Ingun mentioned earlier about the Italian heritage. I mean, they both left school at 11. Father was fought in World War II. Mother brought up in a village in central Italy where, in the war, which was not easy at all, had no money, came to the UK, couldn't speak English. They had it far tougher than me. But the key thing that I've learned from them is the fact that they were always positive about life and they always wanted the best of us. So that for me has been a key thing. And I think some of the people who struggle, I think, with finding roles and things have probably maybe approached it a little bit differently. And as I say, I certainly felt that being positive and optimistic has been a big plus in my life. So that's my story. I mean, I only had about 5 minutes to say it. There's a lot more I could say, but hopefully that gives you a bit of an insight into me and my life and what's been important to me. And you know, I'm 68 this year, but so what? I mean, retirement is not a fixed date, and it hasn't been for a while. It is, I think a lot of this is about a state of mind, isn't it? And my view is that I can keep, as long as my body holds out, I can keep going. And in fact, I think the only thing that will probably get me to stop is well, they'll have to carry me out. Probably the one reason, but the second reason would be when I'm at a stage where I feel I am not able to offer people more than I can give before. So in other words, it's a stage maybe where I feel I've gone as far as I can, and actually it's all a negative now. So it has to, for me, be what more can I offer people? And I've had to adapt in the way I coach as we've moved forward in the energy transition. But for me, it's all about as long as I can deliver at the top of my game, then I will keep going, and hopefully the health will hold out as well. So thank you very much for your time, and obviously open to any questions, thoughts, or anything that you may like to raise.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Vince. That is already an amazing story. Thank you very much. I would like to dive back to that moment that you are 51 and you're still in that corporate environment. And then there is this moment that you realize, okay, especially at this award ceremony, it's probably going to be 2 years that, you know, that I need to do something else. Did you ever imagine at that point that you would make that real career change from being that employee for so many years into starting your own business? Because that is what you've been doing, being that entrepreneur and having that entrepreneur mindset of constantly renewing and innovating and reinventing. And it was not a moment, it is a constant process. Did you ever think that that would happen? And was this entrepreneurship, was that something that you had already been thinking about while you were in that career, or were you too busy doing what you need to be doing?
Well, that's two great questions, actually. And I would say, while I was on the corporate wheel, I had not thought about going into my own business. And in fact, when I left this job, I thought that if I was going to carry on working, which I did want to do, I thought I'd end up working in another corporate, because I thought that's my life has been pretty well all corporates, ExxonMobil, Suez, Procter & Gamble, etc. So my life had all been corporates, and I thought I would probably go to a corporate. And you can sort of understand that, because you can see that the culture of corporate, although they're different, the culture of another corporate is not that dissimilar, because it's processes, systems, procedures, which I was very familiar with. So no, I didn't think that I would go into, effectively, as you say, running my own business in the portfolio. That realization has come with time, I did have that 9 months to start thinking about different career directions. So I'd started thinking then, but frankly, in terms of the portfolio career, that didn't start coming to me, I would say, until about 3 or 4 years before I actually made the move. And at that stage, when I did think about it, Ingun, I then started to try and make things happen. Maybe that's another key, actually, I should have put on my list. You have to make things happen. So I started to already make the contacts with the university, the business schools, to develop relationships, even though I had a full-time job, because I had a feeling by that stage that maybe something would start changing then. So they were good questions you raise, and no, if I look back to when I was 51 and look at what I'm doing now at 67, I'd be amazed, surprised, and couldn't believe it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you, Vince. There's a lot more questions, but I would like to ask Tatiana to share her thoughts.
Thank you, Ingun. I think that, thank you, Vince, for sharing your story and sharing the reflections as well on these transitions. I think one of the areas I think is really interesting to touch on, and is interesting for other people to hear, is this period of thinking that you took, and how sometimes we take for granted that we do need some time to distance ourselves from what we were doing before, before we can actually spot some opportunities that are out there. Is that process of interrogation. I like when you say, know your strengths, because we tend to take for granted, we are blind to them. We think, well, we are good at that. Maybe everyone's good at that. Or I'm only good at that in this particular setup. I cannot see any other application of these strengths. And I think this stepping back is that psychological process of, okay, this is not my reality anymore. So what is then? And just stay with this question.
I think that's a very good point. I totally agree with you. It is too easy to sort of think of the future being very much a continuation of the past. In other words, what you've done before is the only thing you're good at is running organizations, and that's what you'll move on to doing. But actually, if it wasn't for that period of reflection, you're absolutely right. I think that 9 months in hindsight, although I got a bit frustrated, and I think my wife did as well with me hanging around, thinking about it. The dog wasn't frustrated because he had somebody to take him out.
Had a good time. Yeah.
I think I did need that time, because there's no doubt at all in the corporate career, no time, because your focus pretty well, and certainly mine was on running a business, a big business, and there's really no time to think about other things. And because you're judged on, as you know, you're judged on next week's results, or so you're continually judged on results very quickly, and of course you're presenting to senior management and all that sort of thing. So I totally agree, Tatiana. Time to think. That gave me a time to reflect and a time to think about what I was actually really good at and what I would enjoy. And it took about 2 or 3 years to get there, but I got there, and then that sort of developed over time, where to the point where I knew I then needed to move fully to the portfolio. And I was at a stage in my life where I could do it as well, which is probably important as well, isn't it? I think a lot of people, young people I speak to, said, oh, we'd love a portfolio career. I said, well, yeah, but to do that, you probably just need to make sure you need to look at the financial aspects of it as well, not just having so I was at a stage where I could probably do it, but you have to take the plunge, don't you? So good points, Tatiana.
Oh, thank you. I think Vince, you touch on something that I think is really important as well, the financial side as well, that have at least to have the mindset to embrace the risks and the ups and downs and the chasing for business in a portfolio career, because that is something I should imagine coming out of corporate is a different, I would putting this terms a different game, but it is a different kind of mindset.
It is, because you're absolutely right, because in a sense, what I've had to do since coming out of corporate life is far more what I would call cold calling, business development, than I ever had in corporate. In corporate life, I mean, obviously we had to get new business, but I had a team. I had a massive team to support me to do it. And you know, you're with it. You're operating within the company's processes and strategy and everything, and you're involved in it, of course, and everything. But you're absolutely right. When you become more a self-employed, work in smaller organizations or whatever, there is a huge amount of business development. And actually, that's probably another important thing, is when you do business development, as you know, you will get lots of rejections. So you've got to actually be prepared to put up with people, 90% of them saying no, or we're not interested. So, but I rejoice in the 5 to 10% that say yes. So that's probably the way I look at it. I rejoice in those and accept the fact that I'm not going to be useful to the other 90%, but that's fine.
Every no brings you closer to a yes, so that's important. And one of the things that you mentioned, and that is very important, is your network and rebuilding your network. You know, that is something that we last Sunday in the happy hour we also been talking about. If you move from that corporate into, you know, this portfolio career as a consultant, as a professor, as a coach, you need also a different network. So you need to build that network and really, that is work as well. You know, it's not, you know, that's the word already in there. Thank you, Tatiana. Renee, I saw already your hand.
I saw him raising my hand.
Corporate environment. So, by the way, I love to say, Mary Jane is online. Nicolette, welcome. Ada, I see that she's online, and Diana. Please, if you have questions, leave them in the chat or show. We love to see you. So if you can show yourself, that would be great. Renee.
Yes, Vin, thank you for your story. So as Ingun mentioned already, I have also quite a long history in corporate till 5.5 years ago. And I went through sort of the same process, and I know a lot of people have done that. And what I actually want to sort of throw at you in terms of, hey, how did that work for you? And is in that moment that you were walking the dog, so your reflection period, so where do we go now? How at any moment of time came in either sort of an intuitive feeling, okay, I'm gonna stop doing the job interviews, I'm really sort of moving to another route, which would be not so clear at that moment, but somehow did you have a feeling of an intuition, like, okay, I really need to move or do different things? And how did sort of your, let's say, the bigger why came in? And I'm asking this because this bigger why for me now has very much to do with how I started my studies, what I did study, and what I still liked so much in my work in corporate. Although I was managing a lot, I still love to work with people individual, and that's what I do mostly at this moment again. So that's what. So your intuition, the feeling in these decisions, and sort of how anything like your bigger why came into the play.
Those are good questions. I think intuition. There was some of that. I think one of the important things I had to do, Renee, was to organize my time well, because there was a danger of just applying to every single job that was going. And in fact, it was quite interesting because I had a lot of people saying negatively that, oh, you'll never get anything like you had before. And in fact, it was quite interesting because I did apply to lower level jobs than I had. And they weren't interested in talking to me because they thought, oh yeah, you'll come in and then you'll be bored. And then getting the higher level ones wasn't easy either, because what I didn't realize at the time was you needed to build a network. And I realized that as time went on, and realized how important that was, because I was getting more interviews through people who knew me that they passed on to other people than I would at all. So I would say it was during that period of time when I was able to spend some time reflecting, because I decided I wasn't going to apply all the time, couldn't walk the dog all the time. So there were periods when I could actually sit down and think about what was I actually quite good at, and what might I be interested in doing. And it was those periods that actually got me thinking that I might need to change direction a bit. So I think it was probably a bit of sitting down, thinking, bit of intuition. Hard to say what was more important, but I think it was perhaps having a bit of time to myself where I could actually sit down and think about that. And I think then, when I then got into the change of career, that job at the school was probably the defining job in some ways, because that job was all about coaching students, right? And I enjoyed it. I mean, I was head of careers there at a well-known school called Cheltenham Ladies College in the UK. Top performing students, of course. So, always a pleasure to sit down with them. But that got me, and they would challenge you, of course. Even the 11-year-olds would be very challenging. So that job got me more into coaching and mentoring. And over a period of time, I left that school and went into executive recruitment. And then after that, I went into portfolio. But that coaching was the one I knew that I felt was a strength of mine, and that I could develop further. And
in other areas also.
Absolutely. Yeah. And when I went into the executive recruitment, I realized it's not just about recruitment, it's about coaching executives, which is what I'd been. So it's coaching people at that level. So it was a combination of all those things that then got me eventually into coaching. And that's where my university work is coaching. My recruitment job part-time is coaching. My job with business schools is coaching. So when I look at it, it's all coaching. That's
what we do best in later phases of life, because our ego is not there anymore, right?
No.
We just want to give. Yeah.
No, absolutely right. I don't, the money's not important. It's not about money. It's, for me, it is now about my 46 years. Can I give that to the younger generations? That's what it's all about. If I can help them in any way I can, I'll do that. And I think there was mentioned about the value of networking. Well, I can even tell you today. So now I'm on something I would never have thought about years ago. I'm on the board of the Women's Engineering Society, right? They don't have many men on the board, I can tell you that. It's mainly women, but I applied for it and I got it. I would never have done that years ago, but I'm now on there. One of the people on the board is doing an MBA at Surrey. She posts on LinkedIn that they're looking for mentors for the business school at Surrey. And I just put my hat in the ring. Now, I wouldn't have known about that, would I, if it hadn't been for networking and taking a risk, joining an organization that probably I wouldn't have thought about before. And I think this is the thing. I've probably discovered late on in my life that actually I can afford to take risks now, which I might not have done when I was younger in corporate life. If you take too many risks, as you know, you get fired. So now I'm at a stage now when I'm not in corporate life and I can take plenty of risks.
Yeah. Thank you. It's very interesting. Deborah, 1 minute. I would like to, Nicolette, I would like to involve you. And that is also because, Vince, you talk a lot about that portfolio career. And that is something that Nicolette also mentions a lot in her work. And it is often mentioned when people really move up to that retirement age. And I love it what you say about retirement. It's not a date, it is a state of mind. I love that. But it is, you know, just before that age of 65, 66, 67, that people start thinking about it. How can I stay active? But I think it will be more and more, the whole labor market will be more and more that people start doing a portfolio career. Like yourself, you started at age 50, and even maybe before that, people at a younger age start doing that, because this is what the world or what the economy needs more and more. Nicolette, maybe you want to dive in. You're muted.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, sorry, I think it's definitely true. And I think with the younger generation, sometimes it's choice, but also quite a lot it's a need, because some jobs are better paid than others. So that's a bit, I think, a trend. Whereas the over 50s, and Vince, you're one of the people who are lucky, because you said, like, I don't need to worry about finance. But I think the portfolio after retirement, you hopefully have your pension, so you can be more picky in what you want to do, paid or unpaid. So I think that's definitely a trend. And if I see it with my candidates, when they're 60, I've got quite a lot of fortunate candidates who can retire at 60. And always my first question is, what are you going to do the coming 30 years? And they're almost full of the chair. Like, what do you mean? So, well, you can live healthy until you're 90. So, and then a lot of people haven't even thought about 5 years into it. And yesterday, actually, my sister-in-law is going to retire at 60. She's always been a lawyer for architects. And she's quite religious. And yeah, no, we have a new figure. And she's really compassionate about it. And so I asked her, is that a route you want to take? Oh, no, she said, I'm too old. And I literally stopped on the road. I said, what do you mean being too old? So there's still a lot of professions where they feel when you want to switch careers, over 50, you are too old. Or over 60, like, no, you have to be younger than 50. And I think, why is that? So I think there's still a lot of things that need to change. And portfolio career is doing different things. But I also feel, and I also look at Vince and other people, and probably Renee as well, you can actually have more careers in a lifetime. Whereas I think not over 60% or 70% is still fixed in you are what you are, and that's what you've been knowing, and that's what you'll be doing for the rest of your life. Like working in corporate, that's what you know. So yeah, why would you step outside? And I think that needs to be more celebrated, but also encouraged.
There's a good point you say there, Nicolette. And in fact, in corporate careers, traditionally, you'd probably be given a package round about somewhere between 50 and 60 years old. I mean, at ExxonMobil, I don't think there were many executives who were beyond about age 60, because generally there was a view then years ago that, well, we need to bring in some younger blood and move people up. And that means getting rid of some of these expensive older people, right? So 50 to 60-ish. And a lot of those executives, of course, when they go off with the package, Shell, of course, all the big companies, they go off with a lot of money. And a lot of them just do nothing. So I got a very good friend of mine who left Shell with a package. He was mid-50s. And literally, he has spent all his time in the last, 12 years playing golf with his wife, which is fair enough. If that's what they want to do, that is absolutely fine. Frankly, that would bore me to tears. I would not have wanted that. Not that I'm useless at golf. Well, I'm not that good at golf anyway. And but quite a few of the people I know who worked in corporate life have basically taken a package and gone and not gone back into industry. And actually, I think that is such a waste, because they've got so much to give. I mean, I feel I've been able to give something, and I think all those people going have got a lot to give as well. But I think it was almost a mindset of, well, when we've reached the end and done our 30 years, then that's it. But
that's also the happy few, Vince, if I may say. There are a lot of people who can't afford to retire and would like to keep on working, but can't stay in their previous role for whatever reason, or the role it doesn't exist anymore. And on the other hand, that happy few, dare I say, also quite often come back as a consultant. So it's not that they don't want to work, but it's that luxury. And also a bit of my parents' generation, the people who retire in Spain, so to speak. I don't think, if I look around people from my age, that's going to happen. So I think there's definitely going to be a shift that people want to continue and still want to change. As Renee said, a growth mindset. There are more and more people who want to stay active in whatever way they can.
Yeah, absolutely. And you see lots of career changing later on in careers, which maybe wouldn't have happened 30 years ago. There was a less of it. Maybe there was a feeling years ago that well, people don't want you if you're beyond a certain age, but I think that's totally changed. And I also do believe it's mindset. If you believe that society is against you because you're older, then you probably will end up not doing anything. Whereas if you have a positive view,
it's a fulfilling prophecy, as you say. Like if you think you're going to be a failure, then obviously you fail. And I'm a bit on crossroads. I wanted to do more with the older generation. I have to make a bit of choices in my private life, but at least I can do that, and I feel young enough. And as I say, you can make the choice. But yeah, and it's a positive. Who said? No, I'm not sure if it was with you, Ingun, but you also have to be careful. It's almost a bit with ageism, having a senior moment. I'm not sure if it was in the Wize Move Society, but that's also a little bit like when you're older, that senior moment, you think that, you forget things. So you have to be careful how you place things as well. We do it actually sometimes ourselves, which is an interesting one to think about.
Yeah. Let's not do that too much. I would like to, Tatiana, I see you already thinking, and jump in, please, and then we'll go to Deborah.
Yeah, I'll make a quick transition to Deborah. So I love, Nicolette, you touched on the language as well, the language we use to talk about ourselves. And there's quite a lot of research on how we use language to describe ourselves, end up defining what we do and how people approach us. And I think that goes hand in hand with Vince, what you said about having a positive attitude towards the head of us, because we communicate that positive attitude whether we want it or not. And that's no fluffy talk. That's actually quite established that we do that. We either communicate we can do something and we're enthusiastic, or that we're defeated and actually we don't really want to engage. But what is interesting is that the conversation we're having now, which is so important for over 50s, is the conversation I've been having with my students at university. They're graduating because they're still leaving university thinking there's one fixed career for them. And I tell them, look, you are 20, you're 21, open your eyes to a world that's happening out there. You're going to have different careers. And actually, that's scary because you're going to have to make difficult choices and you're going to have to face competition. But it's actually really nice that you can escape from something that you might not be happy with, or find something else you didn't know you were good at. So just interesting thought there. Deborah, I'm going to let you jump in.
Yeah, this is such a rich conversation. Vince, when you had that moment of having to leave, it said to me, that's a gift. It seems like a gift. We might not see it as a gift, but if we look at our life's philosophy, sometimes we need to wake up to move forward with a more sense of who we are, so we can discover who are we really. So it's so rich, but that richness can be daunting, because where do you go and how do you get there? And I have to give you kudos for walking the dog. Everybody got into the dog, and because that's a time of it's a displacement. It's a time of gestation, of integration. There's so many things going that we have to leave behind in order to go forward. It's not that we're we have to leave everything behind. Like Tatiana said, there's gifts that are there. We have to bring them with us, but there's more gifts that are waiting to be uncovered. And you went into that period of, well, who am I? And that brings up like, what do I want for my life? Where am I going? And so there's so many tools out there. You could have gotten into the fear stage and then just spiraled, but you didn't. You took that time, and then your body, because the body is an integral part of the whole process. If we're full of cortisol and adrenaline and fear, we're not going to be able to have, Renee, the intuition and insights as much as we can. But if we can have the tools when we come to those stages and throughout our life to be able to settle down our whole being so that we can make the right decisions for the next time and then go on the journey. It's like trusting our inner compass, that we're actually on the right path. It might not look like it, but we're on the right path. And look at the little gifts that are constantly being brought to us as an opportunity to explore something that may actually be better for us. Yeah. Kudos how you handled all this.
Well, Deborah, you raised some very interesting points. I just made a couple of notes here. The thing about the right path, that in a sense, when you coach people, you know, they want to know they're on the right path. Are they making the right decision, and this, that, and the other? And I suppose I had one view on it. What I had was that if I made a decision, it was the right decision at the time. It was not the wrong decision. And even if the thing didn't work out, I would learn so much from that. It's a bit like people who leave corporate life and go into a startup that fails. Actually, they learn so much from that they move on then to the next stage, rather than the fact it was a failure. They don't look at the failure side. They look at the fact actually they learned so much. So for me, whatever I did was the right decision at that time, and I never felt regret about it. I think the second thing I'd say is you get a bit of concern. I certainly had a concern about how I would be perceived by others because of the fact that I'd left the company in that circumstance. And, you know, even years ago, if people left companies, it was usually because they'd been fired for a misdemeanor or not poor performance. Over time, we began to realize that people were leaving companies because companies were being restructured. So that was another thing that I had to sort of think about, was how would I be perceived and how would I explain it to people when they came to say, oh, why did you leave that company? And so you have to have a story, don't you? And that was another thing that I needed to think about, because I knew some people might think, oh, he's been fired, poor performance. Well, in fact, I'd never had a poor performance in my life. In fact, I had a good performance before I left the company, but so it was nothing to do with performance, but people are always suspicious, of course, that it might be. And then something Tatiana said a bit earlier about interviews for younger people and being positive. That's absolutely right, because I sit with my students at Nottingham, and basically I tell them in the interview, you've got to show the employer that you've got to make them feel as though they're the only company you've ever wanted to work for in your life, and you have a passion for that company, and you haven't applied to anybody else. So you're absolutely right. This being positive, it's not just for people like myself, it's the younger generations, because they're going to be up against X hundred other people. How do you shine? And part of that shining is that you do your research properly, and you do make that company feel like company X. I only ever wanted to work for you, and these are the reasons why, etc. So, yeah, fully endorse what you both said.
One more comment. You kept using the word adaptability. That is your strong suit, right? So developing flexibility, resilience, adaptability, versatility. That's almost like an art, because we can be so stuck in our rigidity that to get out of that box is extremely difficult. But there are ways of broadening the box so that when things come into our life, they aren't so big. Yeah, so kudos to you.
Yeah. Thank you, Deborah and Vince. Great points. And apart from staying positive, I also would like to mention again the fact that you say make it happen, but also create it. I'm always in favor of not just wait and see what will happen, but make it happen and create it. If this is something that you feel that should be your next step. I want to go to a couple of posts in the chat. Ada, do you want to share what you mentioned there?
Hello, everyone. My name's Ada. I'm my first time here. Yeah, I just had a meeting with a client, and she comes from very, she had all kinds of things happening to her. She was in a wheelchair. She managed to get out of it. She had something with her spine. So on some point she made her choice was like, okay, now I'm going to do something that I really like. And when she was young, back in the 80s, she was already a DJ. So now she's going back to that. And she has this very strong power name that somebody gave her, that invented for her, DJ Your Mother. In Dutch, DJ Je Moeder. How cool is that? I think it's super. So now I'm actually working with her on crafting her TED Talk, because that's her next aim. I want to give a TED Talk about mindset, actually. About mindset, because she said, I was so not helped by the medical system. On some point, I really had to find my own way. And also she had this mindset, like, I'm not going to stay ill. I don't want to be sick. I don't want to be a sick person. I want to get out of this. Mm-hmm. This helped her really in getting her health back and getting herself back on her feet, literally. Yeah, now she wants to shout it out to the world.
Fantastic, yeah. And by the way, Ada herself, you're an artist. You normally you are on stage, in the theater, but since all these lockdowns, you had to do some reinventing yourself as well, because that stopped completely.
Yeah, that's totally true. My performance, my latest show, Shakespeare's Women, is on a shelf already for 2 years. But I'm also working as a trainer, as a facilitator already for more than 20 years, using the tools of the theater in corporate, the tools of, really collaborating, really trusting each other, but also this out of the box thinking. And I noticed that this is so valuable for corporate, but also for the nonprofit sector, for governmental institutions. These are my clients. So I really enjoy so much what I do in that.
You recognize it, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Ada, for sharing that. And there's Mary Jane. Normally she is visible. She is here. She's listening, but she's right now at a place that she cannot share her camera. Last Sunday we had a happy hour, and Donna's side, she was sharing her story as well, and especially also focused on networking. And that was a great session. She had to leave her corporate life. That was a forced retirement. So it was really that moment that, and by the way, that she was someone who was an expat in the Netherlands. They transferred her from the United States to the Netherlands when she was 58, had a forced retirement at 66 and a couple of months. That is how it works right now here. But what she says also, I felt I was at the top of my game to just retire. There was so much energy, and you can see that even in research, for women, it's actually starts 50, 60, 70. You just grow, you really come in your best performance. And absolutely, I can imagine, Vince, as well, that is for you as well. And maybe not 60 hours per week, but the things that you are doing, there's so much knowledge, so much experience, so much wisdom there that you can use, that, you perform at a very high level. Vince,
yes, I'd agree with that. And actually, for me, it was important to work. One of the things that gives me energy is working with younger people. Okay. And because I learn so much, and in a way, in the job that I do as a coach, I'm very lucky because I can interact with people from school and university all the way up to executive and board. So I've sort of got the whole life cycle, if you'd like to call it that. And I think that the young people, and it's not just younger people who give you energy, the older people as well, but the younger people throw out the ideas, and I get a lot out of working with them. And I found that they've given me, they've kept me at the top of the game, because actually, if you're not at the top of the game, they quickly find you out, of course, by what they say, and quickly realizing that if you're not at the top of your game, then you might have one conversation with them, but they never come back to you, because they actually realize they're never going to get anything out of you. So I think part of this is the fact that people return, and that you're not just coaching a one-off, but actually it turns out to be a long-term relationship. One of the things you mentioned as well, Ingun, earlier, I just made a comment, was about making things happen. One of the things that I did, I didn't know any of the business schools, right? I didn't know anybody there. I just reached out to them, and I offered to volunteer. And for me, that was the step that got me into career coaching in the business schools, because I volunteered. I got some voluntary work with a couple of the schools. They saw that I brought some value, because I was quite happy for them to be looked at on that basis. And then once I'd got one of the schools as a designated external coach, I then was able to use that as a case history with the other schools that I work with. So absolutely, there was a bit about making things happen. And for me, it was about voluntary work. The same with the university. I did voluntary work for Nottingham, and then I noticed that their job came up 2 days a week, which I thought I'd be interested in. And by that stage, they knew me already, and I'd built a network. So it all comes together: network, making it happen, looking out for opportunities, always being open, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you, Vince. I see that Diane is also great. Diana, do you want to give the summary, and then I'm going over to Tatiana, because we are looking at the time, just a couple of more minutes. Diane, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, thank you. It's been great to hear from Vince and the others are here on the call today. Yeah, my clients, many of them haven't come from organisations where they've perceived it to be a job for life. And so reorganisations at whatever age can take place every year. And again, what we were talking about identity, and when you go back and meet those people again, once you've left an organisation and got a portfolio career or go into retirement, it's what that message is, what your purpose is, and your positivity. And that's sometimes one of the hardest steps to get over.
Yeah. We will hear more from Diane in 3 weeks' time, the 22nd. Yes.
Yeah.
So we'll give her the floor then more than today. So Tatiana, yes, thank you for stepping in. Tatiana, just some last words from you, and then back to Vince, and we will be closing.
Thank you. I think that was, I would say, a very enjoyable conversation. So thank you, Vince, for joining us and for bringing those different points you brought at the beginning of the networking, of being open, and so on, because I think those different points are so important and we take for granted on our day-to-day. So keep it open, examine our strengths, and be prepared to take that pause. Take that pause, do some thinking before jumping on the next opportunity. I know that we not all have choice. Some of us need an immediate income, but taking time to think doesn't need to be in a sabbatical. Sometimes can be even as things are happening at work. There are ways to do and fit in this thinking time on daily life. But I think that's very important and a quite useful way to move forward with different things. So thank you.
Thank you. Tatiana, Vince, some final words from you.
I suppose final thing from me is probably one of my favorite subjects, which I continually talk to the students, people I coach about, and that's networking. I'm a great believer in building a network strategy, and I liken it to a jigsaw puzzle. Okay, so the jigsaw puzzle, you get a piece which is possibly the person that you know well, your first degree connection, and then it's a case of your first degree putting you in touch with people who are their first degree, so the second degree to you. And then eventually, I always talk about the LinkedIn approach, which talks about first, second, and third. And very often with a lot of people, their job lies in the third sector. So in other words, they need to make a series of network. And if I look at my career since leaving corporate life, definitely, if I'd have just gone on a linear way of looking at things, I would never be where I am today. I think it's been very much a case of building the network outside of what might have been my traditional comfort zone. And through that, actually discovering that I'm actually quite good at some things that I probably never realized I was good at. So if it hadn't have been for the networking, and building the network and building the network puzzle and the strategy, I don't think I'd have what I have today. So I feel very fortunate I've been able to do that. And as you say, the versatility, adaptability have probably been key in that, as well as a positive mindset. And I hope to continue that as long as I can in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Vince, for an amazing conversation. It was very rich and great points that you brought to the table. So thank you for that. Thank you, Tatiana, as always, rich and bringing a lot of wisdom there. Renee, Nicolette, Mary Jane, Diane, Ada, Deborah, who had to leave us because her yoga session was already starting. There were a lot of people, on and off watching on Facebook, and very special. One of the persons who was looking was my own mother, 87, thinking about how to use Facebook and things like that. But that was nice. I saw her passing, so I'm going to talk to her tomorrow. Anyhow, thank you very much. Next week it will be Holly Lynn, and that is someone who has been behind the Dove over 50 advertisements. Do you remember that? It's, well, you can still find it on but anyhow, not the young and the beautiful and etc., but those who are over 50 and a little bit older, post, sharing how that's in that advertisement. Anyhow, a lot of branding, personal branding, very important also in networking. How do you present yourself? So love to see you all next week. And of course, this is a glimpse of what is happening at the Wize Move Society. This is very important, reinventing yourself, and you can do that on your own, but it's even more fun when you do it together. So love seeing you or on the Wize Move Society or next week here at Zoom or on Facebook Live. See you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All the best.